And of course, Gerald Celente is the publisher of the Trends Journal. And if you have not seen this before, take a look at it, subscribe to it. It's well worth the $99 a year. TrendsJournal.com. What I like about Gerald is that he tells the truth. The truth is not always very popular, especially with those in power. Gerald Celente, welcome to the program. Good morning, sir.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Hey, a little bit on your background. How did you actually get into the business of analyzing what's going on, taking a look at history, what's going on now, and being able to project where we're headed?
Well, briefly, at a graduate school many years ago, I used to run political campaigns in Westchester County. And then from there, they sent me up to Albany, and I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. And I taught at St. John's University, American Politics and Campaign Technology. And then I was in D.C. for several years, between Chicago and D.C., putting together political action committees for the chemical industry, of all industries. And I got to see a lot of what was going on. I'd been around long enough. And then, actually, I'm a political atheist, and it was very easy to become one. My job in Albany was the worst one I ever had in my life, and I'm a guy that was born in the Bronx. Watching grown men grovel and suck their way up to the top all day long is not a thing that I was raised to be like, So I didn't like politics, to put it mildly. And then Jimmy Carter came back from Iran after visiting with the Shah and his wife on New Year's Eve, and he announced to the American people, I'll never forget it, that the Shah was the island of stability in the Middle East.
All right.
Remember those days?
Yes, I do. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school when that happened. Yeah.
So at that moment, after saying, what a bunch of blah, 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 going berserk, and I said, that's when I became a political atheist. I no longer believed in these fairy tales because I've been following this thing for years. I knew how the United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran in 1953, Mossadegh, because you know what they did? They threw out Standard Oil and Anglo-Iranian oil, and they had the nerve to nationalize it. Can you imagine that? The Iranian people wanted the oil for themselves. And,
the nerve of those people. I know.
Yeah. Anglo-Iranian is BP, by the way. They changed their name. So anyway, I knew it was going on. And when the revolution happened, I knew it was real. And I knew this thing was I knew it wasn't going to stop. Millions of people had taken to the streets. You'd read about it. I've been following this thing for years, about the brutal dictatorship of the Shah. The Savak, the secret police, or the intellectuals, the artists, everybody being persecuted. So when the thing happened, I knew it was real. And now I'm hearing Carter lay out this baloney. So now I said to myself, what will be the implications of this? Current events are forming future trends. And I started to buy gold and oil, knowing that those two things prices of those commodities would go up as a result of Iran going down. And I realized if you look at this without putting any skin on the table in terms of buying into an ideology, you can pretty well see the way things are going to unfold. But you can't look only one-dimensionally. You can't look at only economics. You can't look at only politics. You have to look at everything. You look at the entirety. And so I began developing a system that I call globalnomic, with the understanding that all things are connected. Or as they say, all things are connected like the blood which unites us all. So I kept building the system and building the process. And that's how I began.
So you, in effect, are playing three-dimensional chess with world events at all times.
Very well put. I never thought of it like that. That's exactly it. And my dear father, may his soul rest in peace, as a young man, he, any time I'd be shooting my mouth off, he'd look at me and he'd say in Italian, "Papagallo, parrot." He'd stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself. And I'm one of these guys that didn't rebel because I knew that, my parents, God bless them, I was lucky. And I knew my father was a cat, my aunts and uncles, boy. I knew that they knew and I didn't know. So before I'd open my mouth, I made sure I'd know. And so that's the training that I got as a young man. And not to speak until I was sure I knew what I was speaking about. And then being put into the different situations that, life, the hands that I dealt myself and that were dealt to me, I learned to look at things for what they are and not the way I want them to be. It breaks my heart, by the way, to see what's going on in this country. And I try not to take it personally, but it still affects me.
Gerald Celente, once again, publishers of the Trends Journal, trendsjournal.com. Read up more about this. You must. And what seems to be a common theme through your spring report is that 2012, baby, this is where it's all coming to a head. Fair enough?
That's right. It was our top trend of 2012, climax time. And what we said, this is the year it's all going to come to a head, geopolitically and economically. Now, you have to go back. When we said this, the European markets were buoyant again because they just dumped in 1.3 trillion euros to give to the banks at virtually interest-free loans, and the bond price yield started going down. Things were looking very well and happy again, and we said, no, this is only a temporary fix. I urge everyone to stay on top of what's going on in Europe. There's no way out of this, but of course they're going to come up with another scheme. Probably a euro bond. They're going to keep the Ponzi scheme going as we're speaking now, just in the last couple of days. China lowered its interest rates, going to jump more stimulus in, the most since 2008 when they had to do it the last time. Their housing market's in decline. The bubble is being burst. Europe and the United States are the two major buyers of Chinese, Vietnamese, Indonesian, and other Asian, India products and services that we use to outsource. So now, if the United States and Europe being China's biggest export market, if we don't buy, and they're in a depression/recession over there, we're in a recession/depression over here. We don't buy, China doesn't make. If China doesn't make, Australia, Brazil, Chile, Bolivia, they don't export natural resources. So now we're looking again. Australia just lowered their interest rates. What does lower interest rates mean? It means dumping more cheap money on the market to keep the Ponzi scheme going. Mm-hmm. Brazil, you look at their GDP, despite their stimulus, they're going down quick, as is India. India is now talking about more stimulus. Excuse me. So the whole game is to dump more money into the system to keep the Ponzi scheme going.
But aren't they pushing on a rope or a string?
Well, again, they could keep these things going for a while. This is what I've learned over the years. It should have collapsed a long time ago. But then again, you look what's going on and things that can't be denied. Look at commodity prices. As we're speaking today, what's oil down about another $2, mm-hmm. Brent crude? And there's a reason for it. Demand, supply and demand. Demand is declining. Look at today's import numbers and export numbers. They're declining. Why? Because the world economy is going in a slowdown. So what they're going to do, we believe, is they're going to keep stimulating our way out of it, only temporarily. But here's the timeline. The crash of 1929, the Great Depression, mm-hmm. currency wars, trade wars, World War, the Panic of '08, the Great Recession/Depression, currency wars, they're going on. Trade wars, they're heating up. World War next. Actually, the world is at war right now, but nobody wants to call it that. There's war in Tunisia. There's war in Egypt. There's war in the streets of Yemen and Bahrain. There's war in Syria. There's war in Egypt. As I mentioned, with the elections coming up, there's war in Greece. The people are taking to the streets every day virtually. There are tens of millions of people taking to the streets in Spain. Millions of people protesting around the world, in Hungary and Lithuania and Estonia.
Yeah, so this is almost like what you talk about in the report, how these are really the first major war of the 21st century, right?
Exactly. But what they're doing, what the prostitutes are doing, and the politicians, is they're calling it different names. Here, we'll play the game. I'll tell you what's going on over there in Yemen, Bill. It's them Al-Qaedas, I'll tell you, and we got to kill them all. What do you mean the Al-Qaeda? Well, they had this guy Saleh. He was a dictator there for 40 years. The people were tired of living in poverty and corruption.
So weren't we supporting him?
Of course.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, and you know why? Because we got to stop them Al-Qaedas. It couldn't be because Yemen borders Saudi Arabia and the people are tired of that guy over there, too. But he's a king. Kings are good. Mullahs are bad. Dictators are bad. But kings are nice. It's a fairy tale. The same thing in Bahrain. They're slaughtering people every day. Hey, Celente, don't say anything bad about Bahrain. They have an emir over there. He's not a dictator. And besides, we got the Fifth Fleet stationed over there. And you go around the world, it's the same story. The thing that's going on in Syria, we wrote about what's going on in Syria 2 years ago in the Trends Journal and said why it was going to happen.
Well, I'm feeling very manipulated by the media over Syria. What about you?
Oh, definitely. It's a one-sided story, like the Libyan story. One of the big things with Syria, is this guy a brutal dictator? Is he a dictator? Absolutely.
Sure.
Is it any of my business? Absolutely not. But going back, it's the only port that Russia has in the entire Middle East.
In fact, they're doing some rebuilding on that right now, from what I understand, right?
That's exactly it. And so what you also have the same situation you had in Libya. China was Libyan. China was in there with tens of thousands of workers. And now, by the way, there's a civil war. Brilliant maneuver, that humanitarian mission. And now we've destabilized another country. So when you look at, how about those lovely Predator drones plopping into Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and Pakistan?
But they're only hurting bad people, Gerald.
Only militants and suspected militants. And you know what? You could tell a suspected militant from a mile away.
Well, no. I suspected militant. As long as President Obama okays it on the kill list, it must be a bad person.
That's right, because he's our chief executive of the Banana Republic of Los Estados Unidos, because this has nothing to do with democracy or the Constitution, and nobody's screaming murder. If Bush was doing this, the liberals would be screaming bloody murder. But when Obama does it, it's okay. Oh, he has to do it. You know, there's certain things he has to do. You know, he would like to do. They make every excuse other than calling it what it is. And by the way, when we're looking at what it is, you know what they call a militant? Any male of military age in a combat zone is a militant or suspected militant unless other evidence can prove otherwise.
So you are guilty.
Looking this up.
So you are guilty, and then you get the Predator drone, bomb on you, unless you can prove your innocence rather than proving. Okay, I understand. All right. Well, this is, I guess, you also talk about another trend, fascism 2.0, and this all seems to be kind of connected with what we're seeing.
It is. First of all, the first big lie that began, and it began under Bush, of course, one of them, not of course, they all do it, not all of them, but recently they have a good track record of coming up with this too big to fail baloney. Who's too big to fail, Bill? The banks? Who made this one up? Oh, this is capitalism where we rise and fall on our own merits? Well, not everybody. Not if you're a member of the club. We privatize profits and socialize losses. The merger of state and corporate powers, by definition, is called fascism. And fascism has come to America. Oh, there's a poll out today. 44% of the people don't like the Supreme Court. Gee, I wonder why. It couldn't be that new strip song we're talking about fascism. You're driving home after work, and you had a drink, and a cop pulls you over. Listen, you're over the limit. And you say, listen, I only had one glass of wine. Come on. Hey, don't give me any back talk. Listen, I only had one glass. All right, come on, take it. They put you in handcuffs. They take you to jail.
Here comes the strip search.
All right, Bill.
Yeah.
That's right. Take your clothes off, bend over, and spread your legs.
I'm sure this is what George Washington and the Founding Fathers fought for, right?
Yeah, right. This is America? How about putting a K on it and dropped the C? So, yeah, this is what's happening in this country. The National Defense Authorization Act, signed by Obama on New Year's Eve when nobody's paying attention, that allows the military now to come and take somebody like me, you, or anybody else away that they don't like, that they call an enemy of the state, or they decide, hey, we have connections to those suspected militants.
And once again, a suspected militant of military age. All right, there we go. All right, so
there you go.
So Gerald, I guess here it is. It's painting a pretty dark picture here at the moment, and yet, the trains are still running, the airlines are still flying, we're still going to restaurants, and we still are watching our mind-numbing television, and everything appears to be normal. What is the trend, though, in your view?
The trend is that it's going to get much worse. So, I just got back from Berlin, and I've been haunted since I've gotten back. To me, looking at Berlin, it was grander, and I spent a lot of time in Paris, but in looking at Berlin, to me it was grander than Paris before it was bombed out as I looked at it. beautiful buildings from the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was wide boulevards, super wide sidewalks with cafes everywhere, and enough room on the sidewalks. 3-4 times that width of ours in the States, with enough room for people to also walk and bicycle on. Wide boulevards, low buildings, nothing more than 10, 12 stories. The sun is shining in everywhere. And then in between these old buildings, you see all new construction that was built after the bombings. And it's the same thing in Hamburg and Frankfurt. You see these gorgeous buildings and then all new construction from what was bombed out. And I'm saying to myself, these are the Germans, not for nothing. Bach, Beethoven, Goethe, Einstein, Freud, Wagner, the architecture, the quality. How could they let a two-bit freak destroy their country and destroy themselves? And then I'm Italian. You go over to Mussolini. You want to see a two-bit freak? There's a good guy. And Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Puccini, Rossini. These are the Italians. How could they let a two-bit freak? And then I came back to the United States, and I'm saying it's a two-bit freak show. It's all a two-bit freak show. I watched the presidential reality show. Hey, sorry, if you want to believe it, knock yourself out. To me, it's a freak show. So I got back, Bill, and we're in Kingston, New York. It was the first capital of New York State. And there was a building for sale on the corner next to our headquarters. It's a Trends Journal. It's the most historic corner in the United States, the only place on each corner where there's a pre-revolutionary building of stone. And one of them was for sale. And I said to myself, I'm going to buy it. I'm not running away. I've been looking around the world trying to get the hell out of here because I don't want to be in a fascist state. And I saw what happened with Germany, with the people not having the courage to stand up, speak out, not have the dignity and respect and the integrity not to take a two-bit freak's crap. I said, I'm staying until my life is really threatened. And I'm going to do what I can to start the second American Revolution, not one of bullets and bombs, but an intellectual revolution. This is a great country, and I just invested in a piece of it when it was at its greatest, when it was building to become what it was before they've been taking it away from us, taking our constitutional rights, ripping up the Constitution. So, to me, is it all gloom and doom? No. It'll change, I believe, when the people change. When the people find the courage, dignity, and respect within themselves not to take crap from a bunch of loser politicians.
Does that mean this election, this big presidential election, this two-bit freak show, means nothing, ultimately?
It means nothing, and I'm not voting.
Really?
I will not be a part. Again, I know politics. I was in the system. This is, you want to call them the Republicans and the Democrats? I could call them the Gambinos and the Bananos. It's a crime family. This isn't a democracy. We do not have representative form of government, in my view. The only people at this gang of 535, that's how many there are, 500 senators and congressmen, the only people they represent are the people that give them the most amount of money. They call it campaign contributions. Adults call it bribes and payoffs. I'm not going to be a part of this system. I'm calling for a voters' strike. I don't want to choose between Pepsi and Coke, McDonald's or Burger King. You eat and drink enough of them, they'll kill you. And so, in my estimation, will either of these two candidates, as they're already doing. Hey, you see the numbers that came out? Our suicide rate among our soldiers is the highest in its history. Gee, I wonder why. Couldn't because of 8 or 10 tours of duty that they're sending them on for fruitless wars and losing causes. No, I'm not going to be a part of this.
But you can't question the fruitless wars and losing causes, because that means you're with the terrorists then, Gerald.
That's right. You're either with us or with the terrorists. But again, I'm fighting for the intellectual revolution, where we all speak out. There's this wonderful saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, the Hindu saying. And anybody that's practiced and got really good at it knows you needed a great teacher. I believe when the people are ready, the leader will appear. And the people have to get ready, in my estimation, spiritually, emotionally, morally, physically, at every level. Because when you build yourself like that, and you have the courage, the respect, and the dignity, you don't take a lot of crap from two-bit freaks. And there's many more of us than there are of the freaks in the two-bit freak show. It's only the greatest show on earth. And it's only, as what they say, politics is show business for ugly people.
Gerald Celente, publisher of Trends Journal. Dawn's been hanging on and wants to get squeeze in one question here before you head off to your next one here. Good morning, Dawn.
Good morning. Do you feel that this is the year that the citizens of this country are going to be rounded up and incarcerated? And I'll just listen to your answer.
Okay.
I believe, Don, that the reason that they put into place the National Defense Authorization Act, Obama's executive orders that allows him to call martial law at the drop of a hat, any prospected terrorist strike or any potential, that's the word I'm looking for, potential, that's the word they use. I believe all these laws are being put in place because the economic systems are collapsing. And they're going to, and now, of course, with the National Defense Authorization Act, they also repealed the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which now allows the military to take over police duties. So, yes, I do believe that this is the year, and they're doing it all over the world, that they're going to clamp down more and more on our rights, and they're going to arrest those of us who are speaking out and standing up, because the system is breaking down, and they know it, and they want to keep it in control. That's my belief.
All right. Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal. And you talk about this. You also talk about economic trends. And basically, are you still a commodities guy, even right now? Quick question before you take on.
Only gold. And I don't give financial advice. I always make that clear. I'm not a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
I can continue to buy gold. I believe that there's this digital money. I just went through the whole litany with Australia lowering interest rates, India dumping stimulus on their rupees in the tank, the Chinese lowering interest rates, more stimulus, the Europeans keeping interest rates at record lows, as is the United States. To me, this digital money isn't worth the paper it's not printed on. And again, I encourage everyone to watch closely what's going on in Europe, because when we're talking about gold, do you know about the runs on the banks in Greece and Spain? Hey, it's not making a lot of news, is it?
No.
They're desperately trying to dump dough into these banks because the Europeans are pulling it out because they see the future. And just so, as we were, speaking, gold was down today. It was down to about it was at 1564.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's back up $20 to 1584. So this is a very volatile market. It's not in the best interest of the central banks for gold prices to stay high, because the more people that go into gold and silver, the less value a lot of people see in their worthless digital money.
Very good. Trendsjournal.com, $99 a year, and you also have some other offers that are going on there too. But you're staying. You're not like many other people that are saying, "Hey, I'm getting out while the getting's good."
No, I'm telling you, and I'm not a real estate guy, and it's not like I have money, dripping out of my pockets, and I take out a mortgage to buy this house. A piece of 1750s. It's a 1750s house. Actually, you could Google it up. It's called the Franz, F-R-A-N-Z, Rogan, R-O-G-G-E-N, the Franz Rogan House, and I'm staying. I'm an American.
One more final question. Did you ever get your money back after being screwed in MF Global like so many other people were?
No, I got 70% of it back. I lost a big chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no charges brought up against Trump.
Yeah, why is Corzine still walking on the streets?
And that's because of what's happening in a fascist country. The word justice means just us. J-U-S-T-U-S.
Oh.
Have you seen one head roll on Wall Street?
None.
So,
And Bernie Madoff had nothing to do with this. Bernie Madoff had nothing to do with what we're dealing with right now.
Well, you know what? You know what happened with Bernie? Bernie shafted the wrong people. He shafted a lot of rich people, and that made the news. But when you shaft farmers and people like me, by the way, I'm the guy that kept the whole MF Global thing in the news from the beginning.
I remember.
That thing died right down.
Uh-huh.
And there weren't enough of me's out there to make a difference. But with Bernie Madoff, I mean, he got the crew. And so they strung him out. But you haven't seen any of the Goldman Sachs gang. They pay a $555 million fine and neither admit or deny any wrongdoing. Hey, wait a minute, it's happened on its own? And the same thing, go down the list, every one of them.
TrendsJournal.com. Find out more on the website. It's a must subscribe to. Gerald Celente, we appreciate you being on the program. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you, Bill.
And keep the education going. 8:34. It's AM 1440 KMED. Wow. That was an interesting talk. Gerald Celente. And you can understand why he probably doesn't get many Christmas card invitations, from the White House, whether it's President Bush or President Obama or President Romney, potentially, whoever. Two-Bit Freak Show. Wow. The funny thing is that he was getting a lot of major media attention for quite some time, even back in the early parts of 2000. And then he told the truth about where he saw the Iraq war going. He says this is not going to solve your problem. Iraq is not going to be stabilized. There is not going to be a victory, no matter how you call it. And, and at that point, the Bush administration was about quashing any kind of criticism about that. You're either with us or you're against us. Well, he ended up being right. You have to say, I was wrong. I mean, he was right about where that was going even back then. And he has been right about trends much more often than he's been wrong. That's why big corporations hire him, too, examining those trends. I consider it well worth $99 a year. Gerald Celente, Joel Skousen is another one I also recommend, World Affairs Brief. Keeping an eye on that good stuff. Dennis writes in, Bill, what a wonderful viewpoint on our current system, scams and all. Love the two-bit freak show talk. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I like that's a great situation. You think about it. And he's absolutely right when he says, listen, there's more of you than there are of them. And it's like we have these little ants. These 525, 535, ants and a big ant, and we cower in fear. And it's really going to be about the people educating themselves and restoring rejuvenation of spirit, of the soul. I think he's right about that. Let's see. Tracy says, Bill, love that guy. Have subscribed to his newsletter, Trends Journal, for 3 years now. And you can get his reduced subscription rate if you email and ask for it. Have a great weekend, Bill. Tracy, appreciate you writing about that, Tracy. And that's what I was going to mention is that if you do ask for a reduced one, he can certainly do that. 770-5633. Want to make sure you get Sandra in there. Hey, Sandra, how you doing?
Good, Bill. How are you this morning?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
He talked about gold and silver, and since you get the letter, what does he see the trend from the monetary system? He talked about the police state, but he didn't talk about the monetary system going into 13.
Yeah, he doesn't do financial advice per se.
Right.
As his situation is, he says all the paper currencies, they're going down. And, of course, historically, because of the trend, they always do.
Right.
It's just a matter of when. But, like he also admitted, though, he could say a lot crazier. They can keep those plates spinning for a lot longer than you think.
That's what I thought. Maybe even a couple years. We don't know, because Glenn Beck says it's going to pot.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that, 2012 is when it all goes to hell, and everybody gets marched on.
Right.
Yeah, but I think Glenn Beck has actually been doing a very good job of connecting those dots. But, notice how he also often, and we like to talk about that too, about the spiritual renewal that when the people are ready, that proper leader presents him or herself.
And we're going to go as far as we need to go until that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which means that, be prepared. We should be prepared and prudent anyway.
Everybody should be preparing.
All right. Thanks for the call there, Sandra. Lucretia, comment on Gerald before the news break. Go right ahead.
Well, that was excellent. Listen, Bill, what is the biggest superstition of all?
The biggest superstition of all is authority, I think.
Absolutely. Have you ever heard of Larkin Rose?
Yes.
He did an interview with Jan Irving on Gnostic Media, and I really recommend everybody go to Gnostic, Gnostic Media, and type in Larkin Rose. And listen, he the first 3 interviews he does are the 3 interviews. You read part of his book, and it's just amazing.
Yes, the biggest fairy tale, don't have a lot of time, but the biggest fairy tale that we believe in is that there must be an authority. Whatever whatever we call it, that micromanages you, that controls you.
Like, if Sears that said, hey, we want you to go off to Vietnam and kill a bunch of people and be killed. He was like, no way. But for some reason, people do it for their government, and this government's a concept. It's like a forest. It doesn't exist. A tree exists, but a forest doesn't exist. And we think we have a benevolent government that really represents us and is us. And these guys are total terrorists, globalists, treasonous liars. I mean, they lied to us every which way to China.
And I appreciate you bringing it up, 842. Yeah, Larkin Rose is an interesting guy. He's actually, he's been imprisoned, for his beliefs when it came to Internal Revenue Service and government in Texas. Interesting guy. Lucretia's right. Google his name. Look him up. He's a fascinating read, and lots of videos on YouTube, too. 842, 18 before 9. Quick update on what's going on. And we'll catch up on everything else going on here in the Rogue Valley as life moves on.